Coming up, Julian Brave Noisecat is the winner of the 2022 American Mosaic Journalism Prize. He joins us. Plus, Dakota relatives bring us stories passed down through 5 generations. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
Arizona PBS is proud to support Indian Country Today. For 6 decades, we've provided television programs and now digital content. But we go beyond that, sending outreach teams across Arizona, offering workshops in language and literacy, family engagement and community outreach, and supporting tribal communities with early learning and school readiness resources. Join us at azpbs.org.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Thank you for joining us. After a decades-long effort, a tribal nation in Washington is now the owner of some of its ancestral lands. Last week, the Snoqualmie tribe purchased 12,000 acres of forest lands in King County, Washington. Robert de Los Angeles is the chairman of the tribe. He said in a statement, because of this purchase, roughly 12,000 acres of the ancestral lands of the Snoqualmie Indian tribe are being returned to the people who have loved, cared for, cultivated, and protected them since the beginning of time, and who dearly felt their loss for over a century. The area, which is equivalent to more than 18 miles, has been named the Snoqualmie Tribe Ancestral Forest. Moving forward, the tribe says it will aim to sustainably manage the lands by caring for its ecosystems and wildlife populations. An effort to fund an investigator for missing and murdered Indigenous people is still underway. Last week, a bipartisan group of South Dakota lawmakers recommended a pair of proposals in the State House to fund the position. The role was supposed to be created last year by Attorney General Jason Ravensburg, but apparently he has not found the funding. The role would coordinate law enforcement investigations into the disappearances and murders of Indigenous people. Oglala citizen and state representative Perry Poyer proposed the position last year and the money to staff it this year. Poyer says over 70% of the state's missing people are Native.
Really geographically, you saw missing and murdered Indigenous persons all across the state. So that kind of told the story that, this is not just a tribal jurisdiction issue. This is an issue that speaks across the boundaries. It is a city issue. It's a rural issue. This is a South Dakota issue.
The Flandreau Santee Sioux tribe released a statement saying it is willing to pay for half of the investigator's salary for 2 years. February is typically the month celebrating love, while it is also Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. ICT's Patty Tholahongva reports.
Come on, man, we're playing a game. Come on.
All right, bro, I gotta bounce.
Come on, 5 minutes.
All right, 5 minutes.
Give me your phone.
For what?
When I tell you to do something, you do it.
Hey, hold up.
This reenactment shows a toxic relationship. Besides physical abuse, Cece Hovey says some Native teens also face abuse tied to culture.
And that can look like your dating partner saying, oh, you're too Native, or, oh, my tribe does this, you're not allowed to do that, and that's not the way we do things.
The Center for Disease Control and Prevention reports in high school, 1 in 11 females and 1 in 15 males experienced dating violence in the last year.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I kind of do.
To help Native youth, Strong Hearts has a national hotline.
We're 24/7. You can call, text, or chat us online.
Strong Hearts works with the group We Are Native that produced this video asking youth to describe a healthy relationship.
In closer relationships, I want somebody that I can trust. that I can give things to them and get it back safely.
As you're not alone, and we will listen without judgment, and we're here to help.
In Phoenix, Patty Thalohungva, ICT News.
Strong Hearts Native Helpline is hosting a special Twitter event on Thursday to bring awareness to dating violence resources. Well, here's a fun one. An Oneida couple in Wisconsin is the co-winner of the 7th largest jackpot in Powerball history. Last month, Tammy and Cliff Webster won $316.3 million from their winning Powerball ticket. Both are enrolled citizens of the Oneida Nation, and they described the moments after they won.
I couldn't believe it. It's unbelievable. You don't know what to do. We're 4:30 in the morning. We're hugging and yelling, and it was one of the happiest moments of my life.
And then we're standing there. What do we do? What do we do? We are very happy about this, and I want to thank Grandfather, the Creator, God, for giving us this great gift.
After taxes, the couple will take home $225.1 million. The couple chose to take the cash-out option rather than the annual payments. For those of you wondering, their winning set of numbers was 6, 14, 25, 33, 46, and Powerball 17. Alongside the Websters, another lucky person won the prize in California, which meant they all split the money in half. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, a Dakota family shares stories across the generations. But first, journalist Julian Brave Noisecat tells us about his latest accomplishment. The Heising-Simons Foundation announced the winners of the 2022 American Mosaic Journalism Prize this morning. Julian Brave Noisecat is one of this year's winners. His work has appeared in places like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and National Geographic. As part of his award, Julian is also receiving a cash award of $100,000 for his work. Hi, Julian. Thanks for being here and congratulations.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaliyah. I feel like someone who just won a game show or something. You know, that's like it's a big number.
Well, let's keep in the spirit of a game show. When you found out that you won this prize along with the $100,000 award, what was your reaction?
So actually, the way that they tell you that they won this prize is that they reach out to you as the Heising-Simons Foundation, but they don't tell you why they've reached out. So when I hopped on the phone with the guy, Brian, who's a really wonderful person from Heising-Simons who speaks to the journalists, I assumed that I was like auditioning for some like, minor local journalism grants or something like that. And then like 30 minutes into the call, he hit me with, have you ever heard of the American Mosaic Journalism Prize? And I was like, actually, I have. And then he told me, that I'd won it. And then it was the one of or the largest cash prize in journalism. I was floored. It was like Friday evening, and I was kind of in like a state of gleeful shock for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing.
It's a very large cash prize, and the other part of that is that it's unrestricted, which means you can use it for virtually anything. Do you have any plans for how you'll use it yet?
Yeah, so I'm obviously, the generosity of the Heising-Simons Foundation and this prize and recognition is going to enable me to continue to pursue sort of bigger and more ambitious projects to really push myself as a writer and a journalist to, go after big stories and to work on longer and longer form pieces. And so I'm currently working on a book for Alfred A. Knopf. It's tentatively titled "We Survived the Night," and it's about Indigenous peoples in the United States and Canada. It's a combination of reporting and personal narrative. And this prize is going to be super helpful in helping support me while I'm writing that book. It's going to enable me to travel to more communities. There's a piece I want to write, for example, for the book that's going to be focused on Alaska, and so this will help me be able to travel and report in Alaska. And I'm also currently co-directing my first documentary on a project that I can't talk too much about just yet, but it's about the residential school that my family was sent to in Williams Lake, British Columbia, Canada. And this prize is also going to, make it possible for me to support myself and to, really go for it on some new journalistic and creative directions, which is just so awesome and so encouraging. I'm really grateful for that.
So often, as journalists, a lot of us like to think about our sources, the ones who allow us to tell part of their story, who uplift the narrative that they have to share. I'm really curious, for all of the sources that you've interviewed over the years, how do you think that this prize almost uplifts them as well?
That's a really great way of putting it. I feel as a journalist, broadly speaking, but also specifically as a Native journalist who writes so much about Indian country and actually got my start writing for Indian Country Today. I wrote a very short-lived lifestyle column called Powwow Reflections when I was in college. It was like sort of dispatches from the Powwow Trail. And I since then and to the present, essentially my job is I get to go see and witness and experience the beauty that exists in Indian country. Also the challenges and some of the awful legacies of colonization and genocide as well. But I get to go and be amongst our people and see new communities and see the way that we are. And I get to take that and I get to write stories out of it, right? I get to share our perspective and our experiences with the broader public. And show a country that tends not to care about Native people that we matter, right? That that's what the news is. It's telling people, hey, this is a story that you should know about and you should spend time with. And as a journalist, I get to be the one who gets to point the lens and say, hey, this is something you should know about and spend time with. So, I feel really, really grateful. And at the end of the day, I feel so much gratitude for people who have spent time with me and shared their stories with me and given me that privilege of being able to share their story with a broader reading and engaged public.
With the Heising Simons Foundation recognizing you and your work, what do you think that means for Indigenous journalists and their reporting?
I think that the stories coming out of Indian country are just some of the most amazing, big stories of our time. And I think that it's really important that, not just Native people, but all people really pay attention to what's going on in Indian country, whether it's related to, historical injustice or, the future of climate change. I think that, we have a perspective and an experience that really, really matters. And, that is the way that I approach my journalism and my writing. And it just feels, I'm just really, really grateful and I feel really encouraged that a foundation like Heising Simons and the American Mosaic Journalism Prize would recognize and see the value in that and, reward that. And I hope that, this is just the beginning for many, many more Native journalists.
Well, Julian, thank you for your time and congratulations again.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
A new book from the Minnesota Historical Society Press is a heartfelt blend of oral histories and traditional Dakota legends. Voices from Pazuta Zizi is written by Teresa Peterson and Walter Superlabat Jr. They join us today. But first, let's take a look at part of a film from Pioneer PBS in Granite Falls, Minnesota.
Well, if I really had a big ego, I would say I'm a Ikchewichashta, which means a common man, but that no longer has that meaning anymore. Ikchewichashta used to mean, I'm just a common man, but people take pride and say, oh, I'm just a common man. And I always kind of laugh at that. I got started 32 years ago when I made a big change in my life. I sobered up. I sobered up, and I noticed other people who had sobered up, other Indian people had sobered up, and they kind of immediately went to being super Indian. They went to sweats. They got involved in all kinds of different ways, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just damn satisfied. I'm damn happy I'm sober, and I'll take. Maybe a year in, I noticed that I was missing something. Intuition kind of leads a person to a certain place, and I noticed that there was a spiritual aspect to my being that was missing. I decided to put away my preconceptions and look into my Dakota ways, you might say, and I decided to dance. From that endeavor came the beginning of the artwork, because I didn't have the money to buy an outfit. I mean, at that time it was a minimum of $1,000, which doesn't seem much now for a whole outfit. But at that time it was a lot, so I figured I'll make my own outfit. And surprisingly, my first beadwork was pretty good. I was really satisfied with it, in fact. And one of my early pairs of moccasins I was so proud of that I came home to show my dad. He was actually getting kind of emotional. He was on the verge of tears, because he kept rubbing the beadworks like this, and he's saying, oh, he says, I thought this was a lost art. And so that was really a motivation to, continue. And I ended up, I had not intended to give him that, but after that, I got to give it to him. So I gave him the moccasins. When I started to make my outfits, learning to do beadwork, I went to Tandy, and I got leather, and I started doing just about tore my hands apart. But I finally got my outfit done. But that year that I danced, some guy in the Powell circuit come up to me and says, hey, geez, I like your beadwork, boy, you did a good job of that. I says, yeah, but geez, you look at my fingers, what I did to my fingers. And he says, oh, you have to have Indian tan buckskin. That's just like cloth. You need to. And I said, yeah, okay. But where the hell do you get that? I thought that was something of the past. I asked my dad, I says, Dad, he said, do you know how to make Indian tan buckskin? He says, well, sure. I used to help my mother make buckskin. So through his explanations and help, that's how I got started.
Welcome, Teresa and Super, to the ICT Newscast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa, let's start with you. What inspired you to write this book?
It just really, this whole thing originates from my great aunt Cerise, who's now gone, and my great grandpa Wambadiska, who wrote a letter to his daughters that contained a lot of stories, but also the story of my great great grandmother Tashina Suspechawi. And, he intended to write a book, and he wasn't able to fulfill that, but his daughter did, Cerise, and she self-published it, and people wanted copies of it because of the rich stories that were contained in it. And over time, through our visits, we decided we would redo that. And then further down the road, because this has ended up being like a 20-year project, then I asked Super, who's really our family historian and storyteller, to join the project.
And Super, I'm very curious, how did you get your nickname?
Oh, that's a long story. I asked my mom that, and she says, well, your uncle came to a visit one time, and when you were just crawling, and you crawled real fast across the floor and pulled yourself up on a chair, and he says, oh, you're Superman. That was Superman was, that's a long time ago, when he was very famous. So he kind of dropped the man, and I took the name of Super, and I carry my dad's name, so they never would call me, nobody ever called me Walter, because if they call me Walter, people would think that they're talking about my dad. But so I've had that name since when I went to kindergarten. The teacher told me what my name was. I told her, no, that's not my name.
I think I have some cousins like that, where if you call them by their given name, everyone's like, who are you talking about? So I can totally relate to that. I think there's many examples like that in our communities. Teresa, I want to go back to you. When you were writing this book, I understand that a lot of research went into it. Was there anything that surprised you in finding out about that research?
One thing that jumps to my mind is, trying to find records of my great-great-grandmother, Tashina Suspechawi, who English name was Alice Amos and Alice Rogers. And so finding out that she had like 8 children and really only one survived. So that coincides with this story that culminates where, she ended up having 5 daughters. Her daughter had 5 daughters, which the last was my grandma. And so, the trials that they went through just really, resonated with me and made me understand, like, wow, I'm meant to be here, all the things that they went through. And she had 8 children down to, 1. And then this one had 5 daughters that just then carried our family forward.
Super, I want to go back to you and ask, what kinds of lessons did you learn from your grandparents and your extended family?
Mostly, I'm really grateful for the upbringing that my parents gave me, as far as responsibility, working hard. When you're raised on a farm, you have to contribute to the farm by having many jobs to do. And at the time, sometimes you think, dang it, I don't want to do this. But it was those were lifelong lessons that made my life easier, because I learned to work hard, take responsibility for my actions, and of course the worst thing is placing blame on your failures. You're finding blame for your failures on something else instead of taking responsibility. Then you never ever progress. You stay in that mess. So that's what I learned most from my parents.
Super, what advice do you have for those of us living in today's society who also want to maintain our Native traditional values?
Well, I always remember that Sitting Bull quote. It says take the best from the Washichu world and take the best from the Indian world and make a life for your children. Sometimes perhaps some of the young people want to recreate a past that no longer fits this world. There are aspects of our culture that is important to save. It can be as simple as saving my Indian corn and learning how to make pashtayapi and simple things like that. Learning from my dad how to make buckskin, Indian tan buckskin. Those things are all valuable things to take into this this lifetime. So
Teresa, I'm very curious, and we only have one last, this is my last question. What has been the reaction from others from this book?
Well, I think it's been really positive, and I think it's really fitting for the time that we're in. This awakening of reconciling invisibility and the narrative that needs to change, and all of that. So it's been really welcoming. The message behind, for me, and anyway, in this book is that we all have story. It matters, and stories help provide a sense of belonging.
Well, Teresa and Super, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. Thank you for watching. For all the latest news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.